In two different scenarios and with similar propaganda acts, the Islamist group has never released the last 6 hostages, who complete this first phase of the truce. In the early hours, he freed Tal Shoham and Vera Emju, an Ethiopian Israeli who had been kidnapped for more than a decade in the Hunting South. Shortly after, the Red Cross was never handed over in the center of Gaza to 3 young Israelis who were captured at the Nova Music Festival during the attack on October 7, 2023. And an unusual image: one of them kisses his captors. The 6th hostage was handed over privately today because he is an Israeli Arab. In Tel Aviv's hostage square, applause, joy also among the relatives who were watching the live broadcast of the releases, and excitement among the friends of Haber Amejis. He suffers from a mental illness and is a humanitarian issue, as Micah says. He has been held since 2014, and today he has embraced his family again. This latest hostage release comes after days of tension. On Thursday, he never mistakenly identified a body that did not correspond to Siri Vivas, the Israeli mother of 2 kidnapped children. On Friday, new remains were delivered, and today, the Israeli Forensic Service has confirmed that the last body is that of the hostage of Argentine descent. Next Thursday, he must never deliver the last 4 corpses into his hands. A second phase of Palestinian hostage and prisoner swaps would then begin, but the negotiations have only just begun. The far-right alternative for Germany could come in second place according to polls.
All the parties assure that they are not going to make a pact with them. They are committed that they will not be able to reach the government. In case those forecasts are confirmed in tomorrow's elections, we're going straight to Berlin, Alberto Frale. Yes, the first one who says that he will not make a pact with the alternative for Germany is the conservative Metz, the favorite in all the polls, who accuses the ultra-right of wanting to destroy the CDU, referring to the fact that the main source of votes of Alice Weidel's party are traditional right-wing voters disappointed with former Chancellor Angela Merkel and her last stage, in which she staged a social turn, and opened the door of Germany to almost 1 million Syrian refugees. Today here, the far right, which is still second in the polls, has had demonstrations for and against. 5 points below are the Social Democrats. Chancellor Scholz is trying to recover positions, to rise in the polls, to try to improve his negotiating position before an eventual negotiation for a coalition agreement with the CDU. We have traveled through eastern and northern areas of the country with a socialist tradition. They have told us that they are losing faith in the government and that people are looking for alternatives to traditional parties. The sailors of Griswold are waiting these days for the Rik River to start thawing so that they can go out to the Baltic Sea. One of them is Jens Werther, who lives with his wife on a boat. He has traveled halfway around the world as a captain before returning to the icy German north. He tells us that he is worried about the war in Ukraine and climate change, but that his country cannot fix the world alone. We are world leaders in engineering, in efficient engines. And then the government comes and says, fuck this shit. We don't need it anymore, and it ruins an entire industry sector like that. Western Pomerania is one of the 5 federated states that were united to the West with German reunification. A historical fiefdom of social democracy, disenchanted by the economic crisis and inflation. While the government allocates large investments to causes that are considered alien here. Mike Wittenvessa has 8 employees in a company that is dedicated to attracting tourism to Griswold. He says that because of his profession, he is obliged to be optimistic, but that reality makes it difficult for him. He tells us that here in the Old West, people have less money to face the recession, that the neighbors are losing faith in the traditional parties and are starting to think about alternatives. We are talking about feelings, not reality. How do you manage that people feel insecure?
They are unsecure. Every crisis that comes up needs an end.
Every crisis needs an end, a sentence, and the people of the North do not see it near. The President of Ukraine does not confirm that there is still an agreement for the United States to take over the country's rare minerals. Zelensky does say that there is a draft principle that Washington and Kiev delegations are working on. The United States is putting a lot of pressure on Ukraine with this issue. Trump threatens to cut off the military and financial aid with which the country is surviving. He's even telling America that he might cut off its internet signal via Elon Musk's Starlink. The United States and Ukraine also cannot agree on the end of the war. Washington is going to bring to the UN General Assembly a resolution that it has agreed with Kiev, in which it calls for the end of the conflict without mentioning the recovery of the territories occupied by Russia in Ukraine. This is unacceptable for Kiev, and they also say close advisors to Zelensky, who can undermine the position of the United States as a great global power.
Trump's chainsaw shakes up the Pentagon. The last head to roll has been that of Charles Q. Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The president announced it, as usual, on social networks. Brown, the second African-American to occupy the top leadership of the Army, has been a strong defender of the diversity and inclusion policies that the new government so strongly repudiates. His replacement, Dan Raising Kane, is a retired Air Force lieutenant general. Trump praises him for his role, he says, to annihilate the jihadist Daesh Caliphate in his first term. It's part of an unprecedented restructuring at the U.S. Department of Defense. Its new head, former Fox anchor Pete Hegseth, intends to drastically cut its budget and lay off between 5 and 8% of the Army's nearly 1 million civilian employees at the head of the sniping at public spending, billionaire Elon Musk. He and his team have fired more than 10,000 workers and dismantled programs throughout the federal government. His chainsaw generates discontent, even among some Republicans. Why does a supposedly conservative party take such a radical and extremist approach? A citizen asks at the Georgia City Hall. A Republican congressman admits that cuts should be done slowly and methodically, and that's not happening.
In this neighborhood of Mina, in Mauritania, everyone knows someone who wants to get on a cayuco to the Canary Islands. Ali has tried 4 times. All 4 times he was scammed. We went to the sea and got out, he tells us, but the captain told us that the engine was not working well and that we could not move, and took us back. Working as a bricklayer, he managed to raise 2,000 euros to pay for his ticket and that of his wife Ft. Mata and little Isaac. They stole my money, he said. They stole it from me. They told me, I'm going to take you to Spain. And that never happened. He lives with 18 other Africans in 2 rooms, for which they pay 100 euros. They have between eyebrows. Go to Europe. It's no better than this one, David explains. You shower at your time, have dinner at your time. Look at the water we have, everything is dirty. It's not easy to live like this, he says. In this neighborhood of Sisi in Mina, in the heart of Nouakchott, thousands of African, Senegalese, Gambian or Ivorian Coast migrants live in this situation of marginalization. Many people have it in their heads to take a cayuco, to travel to the Canary Islands and get out of poverty. However, he can't take it anymore. He comes from burying his brother with malaria. We didn't have money for the treatments, so we left it here. He passed away yesterday at 4 o'clock, he tells us. He wants to start again from scratch in Sierra Leone, so that his children don't end up like him, trapped in Mauritania.
No one here in this room would say that what they are doing is unloading a container of maritime goods onto a truck. It is the way the dockers of the new automated terminals in the port of Lisbon work, as other ports are already doing, because it is the future. Only they tell us here, the cranes that move the cargo do it with cutting-edge technology. One of the largest foreign investments in Portugal in the last 5 years has been made to improve its operating performance.
And it is cutting edge because we do that with ARGs, which are cranes that move with pneus, with pneumatics.
Unlike other cranes that go on rails and have less movement capacity, it is striking that outside we do not see workers in the yards. All the work is remote. The port of Lisbon already has 1 kilometer of automated dock, capable of serving ships with up to 16,000 containers. From the top we we are with about 14 meters on one of the platforms, you can see how much the port of Lisbon has grown in cargo volume, thanks to automation, especially from refrigerated cargo to a lot of fruit, such as mango or avocados, that arrive in South America. The holding company that operates here tells us that its objective is import and export, not to compete with Northern Europe or the Mediterranean, but to be a gateway to transatlantic services.